Duality itself is such a interesting concept when you look at it in, very simple terms, such as the good and the bad, the right or the wrong, up versus down. So it's like that concept of opposing forces, things that are opposite to each other, and the idea that those opposing forces not only compete with one another, but they also complement one another. And when you kind of apply that to life, I feel like it becomes even more interesting, even in terms of mindfulness too, where it's such a personal experience, something like good and bad. I think all of us would agree that there may be major things that we consider to be good and bad, but depending on our backgrounds, where we grew up, when we grew up, who we grew up around, the things that we learned in school, our friends, etc., that will or that will influence our concept of right and wrong, good and bad. What I consider absolutely horrible and unacceptable, someone else might be like, oh, that's not so bad. Like, why are you worrying about that? And that's such an interesting idea. Like the concept that good, even though you just think, oh yeah, I mean, it's an obvious thing. It's like, not really. It's not really a very obvious thing. And yet, you have the idea that without the good, you would never really be able to place value, quote unquote value, on what bad is. And vice versa, if you don't have bad, you would never place value on what good is. And that kind of applies to anything that has an opposing force to it, doesn't it? Something like sweet and sour. You wouldn't know one without the other. And yet, even though we consider them to be opposites, they complement each other quite well too. If you have something that's too sweet, you want to add something sour to sort of balance things out. And that concept of balancing kind of ties in really nicely with mindfulness and what we've been kind of practicing and talking about for the last 40 some weeks of in our minds. We have all these thoughts and all these opposing concepts and ideas and feelings and emotions that sway from one to the other. That one very obvious one of like, oh, I can't do this. I'm terrible at doing this. Swinging back over to, I got this. I'm totally confident in my abilities. I have no issues taking this task on. You have that duality jumping of can do it and can't do it. But then you want a nice balance. And I hope you guys can see that where that's coming in, where you have a little bit of a sense of not being sure, balanced with the confidence to move forward. So you're not overly, let's say, cocky and think, I got it, I know everything. And you're not too on the other side of saying, I'm not confident at all. It's balanced. And that's kind of where we all aim to be. Even if you take it away from a simple concept and just say, you just don't want to be lost in your thoughts in a way in a dream world. You want to be able to stay present and balanced. So duality itself plays such an important role in helping us stay grounded too. And I'm not sure if that's clear, and hopefully I'm coming across, what I'm trying to say is coming across okay. But the idea of paying attention to duality is kind of where I'm trying to get at. Where, let's say you're in your practice and you start noticing there's a trend of maybe negative thoughts. So there's the good and the bad, or the right and the wrong. And if you're having trouble getting out of that, start to look at it in a sense of, well, where's the dual nature of this? It can't always be bad. It can't always be negative, and it can't always be wrong. What is the opposing What is the opposing force? What is the complement to this? Does that make sense to you guys? That's exactly right. Like you need to be able to see the alternative side of things. I'll say yin and yang. You're balancing the hard and the soft. Absolutely true. And such a challenge, isn't it? When you are going, well, we're all going through such hard times. You kind of forget sometimes to check in on that other side, isn't it? It is a constant, again, a mindfulness practice right there, to be reminding yourself, oh, you're going back on that pathway of seeing the negative side. You want to balance it, just like Tina said. Remember all the good that you have, the family, your health, employment, whatever it may be. But it's hard. It is so hard. And again, coming back to personal perspectives, we forget that we have had many different experiences that will affect how we deal with these moments, and whether we sway into a more negative thought process or a more positive thought process. But you know what? People change. We can change, and that's what this whole practice is all about. It's not a walk in the park, 100%. It's something that you have to work at, but it's possible. And the more you make a note of, oh, this is my thought process. Oh, I'm going to see, I'm only seeing the good, or I'm only seeing the bad. You bring yourself back to that middle ground and that balance in between the two. So you're balancing the duality of whatever situation you're in now, and you're staying grounded in the center. Kind of like, if you guys remember, a couple weeks ago, we talked about the Aikido of communication, and extending that olive branch of neutrality. It kind of ties in with this too. You're not stepping forward with aggression, and you're not stepping forward with, what's the word? Kind of in a submissive tone. You're stepping forward neutrally, in the middle, balanced, in between the two sides. Think of it like a scale. And for anyone who's into zodiacs, like Libra's scales. Hopefully that's correct. You want the scales to be balanced. You don't want one kind of swinging more than the other. So you want to stay in the middle, and easier said than done. I acknowledge that. But again, something to consider. I feel like duality is something that you can apply to anything in life, and it's always a really interesting investigation that you can go through, even within yourself. If you don't want to apply it to your practice of mindfulness, definitely use it just to look at yourself and how you behave, and how your reactions to things come about, and just look and see what you come up with and what you discover about yourself. It's very interesting. Even with life and death, I mean, a little morbid, but definitely a topic that has been interesting to me. Not sure for any of you, and if you've considered it, but just the idea of it, and the idea that, let's say, good and bad. And as Tina very rightly mentioned, if you don't know the good, you wouldn't understand what the bad is, and vice versa. It's kind of the same thing with life and death too. If you don't really, it is hard, granted, because you wouldn't know what not existing is like, but it's an interesting place to go to appreciate life more. And coming back to like the pandemic and the situation we're in, appreciating what we have, and the little things, that duality of life and death really puts it into stark reality that, we do have so much. And sometimes it's not as bad as we start to feel. And again, it's back down to our perceptions and our perspectives. And it's something that we can build on, always. And again, mindfulness practice will totally help you snap out of any of those negative thought processes, and bring you back to a more grounded, centered way of thinking. But that was definitely, I guess I will admit, the reason I came to this thought was I was reading Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. If any of you guys have already, I'm sure you guys have read it and heard of it, but that story is kind of like a very stark, obvious contrast of human nature in its quote unquote good and bad form, or good and evil. So I reread it recently, and that this idea just popped into my head. It was like, wow, that is not something I realized when I was reading it in school. So yeah, I thought I would bring that forward and share it with you guys, and hopefully it sparks some thoughts in your mind. But I have waffled on for long enough. So if you guys had anything you wanted to share on the topic, or any thoughts at all? All right. Well, hopefully you take whatever we chatted about and take it away, and mull over it a bit and see what you think. It starts to highlight some interesting things in life when you start observing. But yeah, I mean, if we're okay to move past our chat and have a few minutes of introspection, I'll ask that you all get comfortable wherever you're sitting, or if you're standing, again, that's okay too. Just make sure you're safe and you have a place to rest yourself. But if you're sitting, please just make sure your posture is nice and straight. Feet are nicely flat on the floor. Hands at your sides or in your lap, wherever's comfortable. And just check in. Check your body posture. Just make sure you're nice and comfortable. And I want you to take a nice deep breath in, just a full lungful of oxygen, and just fill your lungs nice and deep. Fill your lungs up until you can't hold anymore. In, and just hold it for 1, 2, 3 seconds and let it out until your lungs are nice and empty. Keep exhaling until they're empty. And take another deep breath in, really, really deep. Fill your lungs as much as you possibly can. Fill them up, fill them up, fill them up. Make sure your chest nicely expands out, completely filled with air. Hold it. 1, 2, and 3, and just exhale until you're completely empty. And one final deep breath in. Deep breath, fill those lungs with all that oxygen. Fill them up, fill them up. Make sure your shoulders stretch back. Big chest full of air. And release. Just the reason we do that is to counteract all that hunching that we do and our shallow breathing. And so in case any of you wake up with headaches, this helps sometimes in the morning, just to fill your lungs up with oxygen, and it can really clear your head a bit. So now that we're nice and full and alert, just want you to go back to your normal position. And just focus on your head. And just do a few gentle neck rolls, just to stretch out your neck. Be very gentle and listen to your body. And pay attention if any place tingles. And just go slowly. And complete your last circle and bring your head to the center. And take your shoulders, and we'll do a couple dinner plate rolls, nice and big. Again, listen to your body, be gentle. And then reverse and go in the opposite direction. And complete that round and bring yourself to the center. And if you so choose, you can drop your attention to your tummy or to the tip of your nose. And bring your mind to that first in-breath. And make note of your stomach rising and falling. And if you're at the tip of your nose, feel the flow of your in-breath and your out-breath. And if you hear anything, any noises, just acknowledge and let them leave like the house guest they are. And bring your attention just back to your breathing. If you're in the center of your last breath, take it nice and deep. And slowly bring your attention from your stomach up to the tip of your nose. Just take a few gentle breaths. And bring your mind to your posture again. Just check in with your body. And before you open your eyes, just take a nice gentle breath in. And as you do, raise your arms above your head and look up. Link your hands and just stretch. Just stretch your arms way up, as tall as you can. And as you exhale, gently let go of your hands and bring them back to your center. Drop them right down into your lap. And you can open your eyes. And I hope you're feeling a bit more relaxed, nice and alert, and ready to take on today. Thank you again for everyone who joined. I will say, unfortunately, next week there won't be a session because, shock horror, I'll actually be off. I'll be on vacation, so I will not be able to hold a session next week, but we will have one for the following week for sure. And I will definitely be sending out an invite. So I won't be able to see you guys next week, but definitely the following one. But until then, I do hope that you all have a wonderful day and a wonderful rest of the week. Definitely a stress-free one, for sure. So thank you so much, you guys, for joining, and have the best day.